Chapter 18. Willow was finally willing to go inside to use the bathroom. Mai gave her a cold, wet towel to hold to her face. The teenage girl then found a paper grocery bag in a drawer in the kitchen. She went down the hall to Willow's room, where she stood for a moment in the doorframe and stared. It didn't look like where a 12-year-old kid would live. All the walls had floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and they were full. There were more things to read in this room than in some bookstores. Just above the desk, which had a microscope and an elaborate computer setup, was a bulletin board covered with photographs of plants. Mai moved to the bed, where red pajamas were folded neatly on an espresso-colored comforter. She stuffed them into the paper bag. Mai turned to leave, and that's when she noticed the top book on the tall stack of reading materials sitting on Willow's night table. It was open and face down. From the position of the spine, Mai could tell that it was almost finished. She moved closer, and she saw that the book was from the Bakersfield Public Library, and it was called Understanding Vietnamese Customs and Traditions. And that was when Mai knew that Willow was coming with her. She lied. She told the police that she'd known Willow for many years, not for only weeks. She said that her mother would sign any paperwork because the families were very, very close. Dell didn't contradict her because Mai was so convincing that he now half believed her story. Kwang Ha, unnerved by the police, had stayed the whole time in Dell's car. He hadn't moved a muscle. So, Mai was taken as the authority on this situation. As Dell moved his car away, he could see the neighbors coming out onto the sidewalk. But Willow, with her eyes closed in the back seat, saw nothing. Dell drove as slowly as he ever maneuvered a vehicle heading across town to the nail salon, with the patrol car behind him. No one knew it, but they passed through the very intersection where Jimmy and Roberta Chance had been hit. There was still an official vehicle on the scene, but what was left of the pickup and the box truck had been taken away. There were 4 gray coils on the pavement where flares had burned out. Dell's car drove straight over the ash. They swung into the parking lot in front of Happy Polished Nails, and Mai opened the car door immediately. She and Kwang Ha seemed to be in a race to get inside the shop, but Willow didn't move. Dell decided to wait with her, but it was killing him. The real action was obviously going on behind the plate glass window that had purple sausage-shaped writing which said, "Man and Ped, Euro Style Special. Walk-ins very welcome." Dell read the message at least a dozen times and could make no sense of it. He had to concentrate. Not only were 2 people dead, but there would now be all kinds of official reports filed, and it was going to become pretty darn obvious that Mr. Del Duke had taken 3 kids from the school district off school property to have ice cream and french fries and look at geese. Talk about terrible timing. There were police involved and social workers already on high alert. This was a nightmare. In so many ways, it was crucial that Dell look professional, which was one of the hardest things for him to do. He glanced up into the rearview mirror at Willow. She had her eyes closed, yet tears still oozed out of the corners and ran at intervals down her dark cheeks. He wished that he could think of something to say that would be comforting to her. He was, after all, a trained counselor. And so he turned to the back seat and sputtered, "This is such a big loss." And then he exhaled, and more words dribbled out like applesauce from a baby's mouth, just audible lumps. "It's not much consolation, but you'll probably never have any loss this big again," Dell continued, unable to stop himself. "So that's kind of comforting, knowing that the worst thing in life is already behind you. I mean, once it is actually behind you, which it won't be for a while, obviously." To Dell's horror, her level of distress seemed to increase with his every word. What was he talking about? Dell cleared his throat and tried to steady his voice as he finished with, "Because this is life, and these things just happen." Wow, did he really just say that? How many kids go to school and come home to find that both of their parents are dead? Maybe in war-torn Somalia or someplace like that, then maybe he could legitimately say these things happen. But here in Bakersfield, a total meatball move. Dell bit down on the inside of his left cheek and held his mouth closed until he could detect the taste of blood. That's what it took to shut himself up.